This is a San Martin Flieger, which I picked up late December. And if San Martin doesn't sound familiar to you, well, there's not much of a reason it should. It's another Chinese brand that can often be found on AliExpress. Except this brand is a little higher end than your typical Chinese special, with watches that start in the hundreds and go all the way up to $1,000. The reason I picked it up was mostly out of curiosity. Most people's comfort level for Chinese watches, I think, stops right at the $100 price point. Because if you're going to spend more than that, it's just safer and more reliable to look at a Seiko or a Citizen. Not to mention, probably smarter to look at Seiko and Citizen. But I'm curious to see exactly what you get from some of these higher end brands on AliExpress. So my original plan was to buy this other San Martin Flieger, which is a little smaller and has a Seiko movement. But before I could do that, I happened to find this one on eBay, which is a little larger, has that blue dial, and a high beat seagull movement. So I picked it up, and here we are. And I have to say that so far, I'm actually impressed with it. Spec-wise, this one is a little larger than the ones that are currently available, with a width of 42mm without the crown, and almost 45.5 width. Lug to lug is about 49.5, which is a little on the longer side, although the lugs themselves aren't especially that long, as most of the case is made up by that large round dial. Height-wise, it's just under 11.5, and that's with a little bit of a domed crystal. In keeping with the larger dial, lug width here is 22mm. So if you have extra straps laying around from some other divers, they should fit here. Water resistance is a little weak here at 30 meters. And I believe it's a weakness that's shared among many of the non-diving San Martins. Weight-wise, it's 74 grams, so it has a good feel to it, but not really heavy. Price is a tricky one, as this one is no longer listed. It was still up on AliExpress right as I got this, but it seems to have been phased out. But there are a few similar Fliegers still up, which range from around 150 to 310, mostly depending on the movement and case type. So if I had to guess, I'd say this one was originally around 230. The case is a sand-blasted bronze. The overall case shape itself seems to be rather simple, minimal, and classic. In some ways, it may be a little boring, but that's made up for by the patina that develops on the bronze. And it's that bronze case which will be the main attraction for some people. There are some other inexpensive Fliegers out there, as well as some good affordable Fliegers, but not many with a bronze case. In many ways, patina is just rust you're paying for, but it doesn't change the appeal of having a case that wears and changes and ages as you own it, giving it some real character, which combined with the natural wear marks on a good leather strap, help to give it a nice vintage look. The finishing is decent, but nothing special. The case back is a closed screw-down case back made out of stainless, and this particular one has a fighter jet laser etched on it. But a lot of the newer models just seem to have a blank generic case back. The crown is at the 3, and it's a very nice signed onion crown in bronze, with a giant S on the face for San Martin. And with the exception of the case back, this is the only indication of what brand this watch is. The rest of the watch is rather sterile. Disappointing though is that it seems like the new Flieger models on AliExpress seem to forgo both the onion crown and the logo. The crystal is sapphire and has a very shallow domed shape to it, giving it a nice look, but without some of the optical distortion that can go with it. Which brings us to the dial, which is this beautiful sunburst blue. It is fantastic and just amazing how good it looks. The Arabic numerals and the chapter ring are painted on in a rather thick white paint, although due to the amount of lume in that paint, it often has a slightly greenish tint to it. The design is a basic Type A Flieger. Gold sword hands complete the design and complement the brass case. On this model, the hands are the perfect length. Hour hands that go to the edge of the numerals, minute hand that goes to the chapter ring, and a second hand going to the very edge of the case. It's fantastic to watch the gold second hand just hover over the blue and white underneath as it moves across the dial. Its high beat movement gives it a smooth tick, and it seems almost to be riding the edge of the chapter ring. The blue dial is a little atypical for a Flieger, but it's not unheard of. I think it works well here and mixes well with the white indices and gold hands, giving a clear contrast so your eyes can easily focus on what matters. The blue also pops against the brass patinaed case. The design, as most Fliegers are, is simple yet highly effective. The only thing I would change might be to add some AR coating to the sapphire, although in some ways I almost feel like it's missing something. Although that could be just because this is the only watch I have with a sterile dial, devoid of any brand. Movement-wise, this is a Seagull ST2130, which I believe is a clone of an ETA 2824. So it's a high beat movement with hacking and hand winding. One odd thing, however, is that I believe it also has a quick set date function. And here I think the date wheel has been removed, as you can't see it with the dial. But there are two positions with the crown when you pull it out to set it, which is a little odd on a watch that doesn't have a date. It's a minor thing, but it does bug me a little when they don't use the proper movement for the proper job. Accuracy-wise, the Seagull does quite well, gaining just under 8 seconds a day. I believe the lume is Superluminova C3, and as I showed in my last Hamilton video, it's quite good. Initially, it's extremely bright, and over 40 minutes, it's on par with that Hamilton. Not to mention, it stays almost as bright as my Orient Diver. So if you love lume, this shouldn't disappoint. The strap it comes with is this nice thick brown leather, which is a little bit of a mixed bag, but mostly positive. The leather is actually quite nice, not to mention it does have a quick release. But the stitching is just okay, and the hole where the spring bar is located is a little too wide. The buckle is also just okay. It's not signed and is just gold plated rather than bronze. Overall, the strap is okay, and I think it's still good for the price, but there is some room for improvement. Either way, the watch wears well. It looks great, has a decent height, not too heavy, and has some fantastic wrist presence. But again, some room for improvement. I think it looks a little large for my 7-inch wrist, and most of that is probably from the longer lug-to-lug. Ideally, I think they should have sloped the lugs down a little more, which I think would help it hug your wrist better. Since this one is no longer available, let me just show you some of the ones that currently are. The first is this smaller Flieger. It's 39mm wide and has a Seiko NH35A. The dial is mostly black, but there are a few different versions. But it does come in both stainless and bronze. The next is also a 39mm and also in bronze, but has a different dial in both black and green. And for whatever reason, the hour hand is this square paddle looking thing. The two interesting things here is that it does come with the same high beat Seagull, or an ETA, as well as it seems to come with an Erica original style strap. Lastly is this one. It's larger at 44mm and appears to be in black and the same beautiful blue dial. Yet here it has a small second hand. It's also just a mechanical, although it doesn't say what the movement actually is, so if I had to guess, I'd say it's a Seagull. Let's briefly talk value before I wrap this thing up. And value here is a little tricky with that bronze case. For stainless, there are a lot of Fliegers out there. On the low end, I've seen this one over at Long Island Watch. It's a similar size to the smaller San Martins and has the same Seiko movement. It's not much more, although you do lose sapphire for mineral. Or you could always go for one of the more authentic Fliegers, from Stoa or Laco, for around $400, and they do even have a blue dial version, which I would assume has a better finishing and case than a San Martin. Although I believe the base models only come with a Miyota 8200, which is a bit of a downgrade. Yet it's the bronze case that really makes it tricky to talk about here. They are not as common, and the ones I have found are much more expensive. Those models, of course, will be much more refined, but I think the value is here. You just have to really want a bronze Flieger. Overall, I have to say I'm pleased with the San Martin. It's got quality, and I think it's a decent value. Now, even though this particular model is no longer available, I think it's a good indicator of what San Martin can do with the rest of their lineup. So if you were to buy one, I think you'd be happy. But I don't recommend them. That's not to say you shouldn't buy one, just I don't recommend them, at least not yet. And that's for a few reasons. The first of which is that I actually got this one off eBay, not the San Martin store on AliExpress. So I can't say for certain that they'll treat you right because I don't have any direct experience with them. Second, there's always a bit of a gamble in ordering from AliExpress. If nothing else, there's always the risk of your package getting damaged or lost in shipping. And this is a little bit more to be gambling with, so use your own judgment with that. And last but not least is resale value, or at least my concern for resale value. Not a lot of people know what San Martin is, and even less people are looking to buy a used one. So if you buy one and then decide to sell it, I think you're going to take a bit of a hit just from a lack of demand. So if you do buy a watch from San Martin, make sure it's one that you think you'll keep for a while. So the question now is, would I buy another San Martin watch? And the answer is yes. In fact, I'll probably buy one later this year. I'm just not sure which model. Or I might try a different brand like Reef Tiger, but another higher end watch off AliExpress. But I also have this channel to buy for, so I'm allowed to do the occasional foolish thing just for entertainment value. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think about this Flieger by San Martin, as well as if you'd ever spend this amount of money on a watch from AliExpress, or if it's just safer and smarter to stick with more well-known brands. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks.